So I've been taking in a lot of this Activision Blizzard King being effectively bought out by Microsoft, deal pending. They're going to resolve it within a year, I guess. And I've been taking in a lot of it because I feel like it's a very important story to not just game development, not just WoW, not just labor rights, not just worker power. It's to me it's more that's kind of playing out right now. And watching Taliesin cover this story, I live streamed it earlier. Watching Taliesin cover this story kind of unlocks a lot of thoughts for me. So I wanted to kind of walk through that. And then I have a video by Charles Eisenstein, which has less than 1 million views right now. It's a decade old at this point. It was put out in 2012. And it has less than 1 million views. And it's, in my view, a description of where the world is going, needs to go, and this is the time. And this was put out 10 years ago. And people still haven't heard the message about how our economy could be made better. This is Sacred Economics is the name of the video. And I'll walk through that, and I'll walk through my thoughts on what he says as I go. But for now, I'm going to play Taliesin and his live stream this morning regarding Bobby Kotick and what's going on there at Blizzard.
Such big fucking news. This is so good,
Yeah.
and like it's the thing which is worrying and bad about the Microsoft takeover. Because generally, I think everyone's super excited about the Microsoft takeover, and I think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic about it. I think there's like loads of reason to be incredibly optimistic about the Microsoft takeover. Number one being, of course, that Kotick is toast.
So Bobby Kotick will not stay on at ABK or whatever it becomes once it merges with Microsoft. He will not stay on after that. So he is gone. It's just a matter of playing out this deal. And in my view, this person needs to be made an example of. Protecting abusive people from the consequences of their abuse when they're turned into HR. Like, they've been multiple lawsuits active right now, as far as I'm aware. Multiple allegations. It's not something he gave a fuck about the whole time that he was there. And the board didn't give a shit either, because he was making them money. So to me, it's time for an example.
Yeah. So I think it's like perfectly valid to be excited about the Microsoft takeover, if only to see the back of Bobby Kotick. Now, are there like much more nuanced things to discuss in this takeover? Yes, absolutely. Are there definite worrying things about this takeover? 1,000%. Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to see WoW take on a lot more microtransactions in the future. I think they're definitely going to try and...
I don't know about the more microtransactions. Honestly, I think the microtransactions came from largely Bobby Kotick and Activision himself. That was not a thing in Blizzard before Activision. So it could be that they actually respect Blizzard's name more than Activision did, and their prior commitment to their stories more than Activision did. And they could actually flesh out good games, good characters, and recognize that we should be grateful for these eyeballs that are paying a monthly subscription for this game. This one game. Maybe they should get value for their dollars, because they could just go watch fucking Netflix. They could just go play Final Fantasy. They're finally starting to realize that.
future. I think they're definitely going to try and integrate it with the Game Pass in some way, and I think that we're going to see the game
More microtransactions?
have more microtransactions, which will
that-
include player power things. I think
They do more
that's
microtransactions.
a fair assumption to make based on other MMOs that are
I thought that was Activision's
able to be
thing.
accessed by Game Pass.
I haven't really
You know?
paid attention to Microsoft and
And
their universe
but
and their
in
games.
the short term, as like an emotional relief, it's quite fun just to see Bobby fuck off. For 8 weeks now, Blizzard staff have been striking in solidarity with Raven QA, who were suffering job losses, and lots of Blizz workers have, and Blizzard specifically, have been striking in solidarity with the Raven workers, who are another game studio that come under the ABK umbrella. Now the Microsoft umbrella, I guess.
That aspect of the deal that's going down between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King, the fact that they have today announced that they formed a union for Raven Software QA specifically, and that union could grow to other departments. And Microsoft valued Activision or whatever at 70 billion, the number that came out on this deal. And that number is based on a history of exploiting workers, not paying them enough. And they don't address the fact that they're unionizing right now. Like, they don't just... Microsoft is not just playing for your money here. They could be playing for, like, I think it's attention, eyeballs, willingness to pay monthly subscription services for actual quality products. So it could be a good thing. If they do it right, it will be a good thing, honestly. But doing it right is not ignoring your workforce when they're telling you these things are awful that you're doing, to the point where we have no voice. HR complaints don't matter. That's not how you run a company that's actually going to capture people's attention, because the people, the creatives that build these worlds that people interact with, they don't gravitate towards that kind of vibe. They just don't. They're going to take their best ideas elsewhere. They're going to take their creativity elsewhere. So maintaining and continuing to maintain Bobby Kotick in his position is this symbol of 30 years of I don't give a fuck about anybody below me as long as we're making money. And that wasn't Blizzard when I was a kid. They were jazzed about making good games. You could comment on their frat boy culture and things that happen there, and that's serious stuff. But at the end of the day, Blizzard cared about making good games. That's what they cared about. And they don't anymore. They don't flesh out their characters. I'm so bored with Zoval that I believe he may have become sentient by being bored with himself and is now trying to free game developers from shitty corporate overlords. You guys should form a guild. Anybody that knows the same programming languages, anybody knows the same development tool softwares, form a guild. Go work on any game you want. Get out of the ones that like to target Nazi sympathizers. Go towards ones that want to build beautiful worlds and beautiful stories for people, because those are the ones that are actually going to succeed. And honestly, you could do a lot of this work remotely if you had your own guild and interconnected yourselves, but that's neither here nor there.
Which is incredible, and to see this happening and this kind of worker organization in the games industry in fucking California is wonderful. And it's a shame that it has to be happening, but
Amen.
You know, Better ABK have been doing some amazing work since the whole sordid Blizzard revelations, right? And they don't get enough credit for it, and they are on the cusp of something truly special, because there is no unionization in the games industry in America. It's a really fucked up
There's
hellscape.
hardly any
like so much
unionization
of
at
working
all
class
in
the
America.
US. I personally believe that unionization is vital to the fluid working of capitalism. I believe, like, you know, if capitalism is going to work, you can't have all of the power in the hands of the employers, because it doesn't become a fair exchange.
Worker self-directed
of
enterprises.
labor.
So that term, worker self-directed enterprises. There's this company in Spain called Mondragon. It's a corporation of worker-owned cooperative businesses. They maintain their own supply lines. They make quality products. They are employee owned. That's how they run their businesses. And we, as consumers, can order shit from anywhere now at this point. We can choose what products we buy, who builds them. We have access to more information now than we ever have before in terms of practices of corporations. DuPont got away with so much shit. The government allowed them to get away with so much damaging shit with their Teflon process. Cancer rampant throughout their runoff, and they were not stopped. And they're still around. Other companies don't practice that way. They don't put their externalities on society. They put their externalities on themselves and reflect that in their profit margins. Because when you're living in the community that you're building your fortune in, you care about it and you care about the planet, and all that shit matters.
Becomes a sensual
Cooperatives,
slavery, which is what we see.
You are your own bosses.
Hyper-capitalist countries a lot of the time.
Guilds form
and I
game
think,
developers
having
guilds.
Organization and having
if you know this development tool, you can work
and
any fucking where in the games
vital
industry
to
remotely.
To the proper functioning of capitalism, right? So it's not even an anti-capitalist argument. It's like genuinely the way that capitalism should work. It's the way that capitalism worked before neoliberalism was introduced by the Reagan and Thatcherite governments in the US and the UK.
So suppression of labor itself goes way, way back farther than just Thatcher and Reagan. That's when it was repopularized. This story of picking yourself up by the bootstraps, this story of the self-made man, all of that. That was repopularized then. But that is old thinking. That's the birth of capitalism. Labor has been suppressed. People died in this country in the 20th century so that we could have weekends. Your grandparents knew people that didn't cross picket lines. Labor used to actually have power. And it's been getting stripped away more and more and more. More and more and more in this country. Because they convince us that what they're doing is in our benefit, when often that is very much not the case.
Rich people don't spend their money. You know, they spend like a tiny fraction of the amount of money they have. Most of it, they put away. Most of it, they save. This is why billionaires are a bad idea, because no one can spend $10 billion.
Not only is it they put it away and it just gets cycled around in different gambling schemes on Wall Street, literally watching bar graphs going up and down and betting on the outcomes, which is literally what happens in Wall Street every day. It's legalized gambling and greed, and these people have a sickness. At this point, it's affecting the world, the bullshit that they do, and the people that they prop up, and the people that gravitate towards that kind of thinking. It goes all the way back to how money is put into the system. The Federal Reserve, world banks, poof it out of nothing. It's literally just ones and zeros in banks, and then they put some into this bank and say, here's some cash, go loan it out. And then they take money out with no transparency. It's like this sleight of hand. And we're all left here in the real world where things are tangible and we buy shit and we get shit, and it's not just bits. Looking at it all like, how do those numbers get so high? Why do I have to slave my life away to pay off $250,000 for a house to live in when you could make one out of aircrete for $2,000 yourself? How did this happen?
No one needs $10 billion to live off, so they spend a bit. They spend a tiny fraction of it, but really what they do is they lock it up. They put it away in tax havens, and all of that money gets sucked out of the economy. So, like, money that gets given to rich people does not trickle down, it disappears. You give money to poor people, however, and those motherfuckers spend it. And that money goes back into the economy. So, yeah, they called it trickle-down economics. I didn't think anyone still believed that was a thing. It saddens me greatly to hear that people do think it's a thing. I call it trickle-up economics because that's exactly what it actually is. And it's resulted in so much money just disappearing from the system. How do you solve that, though? Tax more?
So, solving that, the only way to solve that is changing what the people that create money value. Right now, they only value the people that make them more money. They don't value the people that provide services like elder care and mental health care, except if insurance will cover it. That's the only time you get these services at all, is if everybody pays into the pool. And these things are essential, and they're not funded by the public. They're funded by insurance companies that we pay for. It's a corporation. We have lost sight of what has value. Time with family, time with friends, time to observe the world around you. It's like why we're here. Go take a walk in the woods and fucking chill out. You don't have to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You don't have to do that. We have the capability not to do that. Our wants have grown so much.
Rich people will help the economy by spending money. Okay, it was used as that lie was used as an excuse to give rich people tax breaks and government help. Okay, so it's not a case of just taxing rich people
and
more.
Start wars
not giving
over
them
oil prices.
So many handouts. Like, the idea of trickle-down economics and neoliberalism in general was like, okay, we're going to give government assistance to some people, but we're not going to give it to poor people because that'll just make them lazy. So rich people aren't lazy. That's why they're rich, right? Because the only reason people are rich is because they work really hard and are very clever.
It's that whole Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged thinking that if I didn't do this, if I didn't make this happen, nothing would happen. And maybe that's true, but there is no one individual that should have an effect that billionaires have on the world. Right now, Elon Musk is spending billions trying to get on Mars within the next decade as our own planet dies. That money like it could be going towards desalination efforts at the coasts right now and revitalizing rural Colorado economy by piping it inland and making fake snow all winter for the ski resorts, creating your own temporary glaciers and having more water for everybody down the line. Water is a limiting resource. Water is valuable. It is undervalued.
What do you think? Why billionaires keep their money? I can only assume status. They keep it because I don't know.
It's a sickness in people. Greed.
There's a chance you could be born a billionaire and be a philanthropist. But if you've earned billions of dollars, you haven't done it.
A part of their identity. I am a rich person. I make money. I make deals.
You haven't earned it by being nice. You haven't earned it by not shitting on a whole ton of people and exploiting a whole ton of labor to get there, right? So what we
it's
do
literally
is we deify
gambling
and,
addiction. It's betting on markets.
The least
it's gross.
Kind of
and we let it rule our lives
in our society. Like, we've got an economic system which doesn't just deify the worst people in society, but kind of makes a kink out of selfish behavior.
So there's a lot to that. These boardrooms are exclusively people who care about money and making more money and use it to make more money. That is who these people are. They literally go and buy companies and see if it makes them more money or if it makes them less. They are gambling with the businesses that people build. I don't know why anybody would want to go public. Like, you just want more money, you want more resources to build bigger, but giving away control of your company to people like this who will not give a fuck about it, why would you do that?
Yeah, why do you keep 99 health pots in Pokemon? Exactly. And at a certain point, the billions you have stowed will generate more money than you need to live on. Yeah, exactly. That's why billionaires are terrible. And what this has created in America and in newer industries in America in particular, like the games industry, is they're just completely devoid of any kind of unionization or or worker representation at all.
Most American industry doesn't have unionization anymore. It's gone so far the other direction.
And it's illegal to stop your workers organizing. I think it's technically illegal to discourage your workers from organizing in the United States, but that doesn't fucking stop them doing it.
It really doesn't. And they use underhanded tactics.
A group
they
of 34
try and
quality
control
assurance workers
the
from Raven
thought
Software has asked
and the
Activision
language
Blizzard to formally recognize their
at
formation
the
of the
institution
Game
that is trying to
Workers
unionize.
Alliance
I've been through it. So just to expand on that a little bit, I worked as a third-party contractor for Hartford Steam Boiler, and I was posted at Train in Pueblo, and they had a union drive while I was there. And what they did was try to control the language. They tried to instill fear. They tried to imply over and over that they're going to take your job and move it to this other location if you unionize here. Your job won't be here anymore. And it's a very real threat. Companies do that shit all the time. So it's not a lie, but they instill this fear. And then if they do unionize, corporations move somewhere else. They spend the money to move somewhere else because they know that their profits that they can go bet with on Wall Street, that they are bleeding out of your people, will be bigger if there are no unions.
Following 5 weeks of striking in response to 12 temporary workers being told their contracts would not be renewed last month. How fucking baller is that? They've been striking for 5 fucking weeks for 12 contract workers. That's the kind of solidarity we need, right? That's amazing. Like, the fucking kahunas on these strikers to be doing that. As reported in a press release by the Communications Workers of America, the group of QA testers have amassed the 50% plus one member majority necessary for Activision Blizzard management to voluntarily recognize their status as a union, although only applying to that subset of quality assurance employees rather than the entire 10,000 person staff. It's a shame.
So, other departments could vote themselves in to this union. Other games companies could vote themselves into this union, potentially, or like a chapter of a game developers union. Everybody could be connected. They can tell each other what kind of bullshit they're pulling over here at Activision right now and tell people don't go work there. They're allowing abuse rampantly in their company. Go work somewhere else because video games is the future.
An affiliate of the Communications Workers of America, which represents approximately 700,000 workers, as the largest labor union in the United States and around 8,000 in Canada. This unionization would be a first for Activision Blizzard and only the second time that
this isn't just a games industry story. This is
following the
a labor story
that
is playing out in front of our eyes right now.
First time
workers
workers
waking
have
up
achieved recognized unionization in a fucking
to their
mainline
actual
studio,
power in this economy,
which is groundbreaking and really important. And whatever you think of unions, personally, I happen to think they're a very good idea and vital to the working of like the stable working of the capitalist machine. Whatever you think of unions, the fact is they want one, and the fact is they want one, so they should have one. Oh, and also, if you don't think they should form a union, then you agree with Bobby Kotick.
He's not wrong.
I feel like that's another important thing to bear in mind. You're absolutely entitled to fucking hate unions and to think that these workers would be worse off with a union. That's your opinion. I'm not going to argue with it. That's not what I'm here to do. I'd just like you to bear in mind, if that is your opinion, you agree with Bobby Kotick.
And you're fucking wrong.
If unions didn't help workers, then every fucking business in the United States wouldn't want to stop their workers unionizing. Like, there's a fucking reason that Activision don't want their workers unionizing, right? And it's not because unions are bad for their workers. Okay? The fact that unionization exists and like in the fucking shit way that exists in America even means literally every worker is 10% better off. Pay is 10% higher because of unions. That's just a fact, whether you are in a union or not. And QA gets shat on every single day of their lives, and they deserve some fucking respect, they deserve some fucking security, and they deserve some good pay.
He's right. He's very right. QA, I mean, they think they can get away with not paying them well. I don't know what their reasons are. Maybe it's because they're spending a lot of their days playing video games. Or like taking care of bugs in video games and making sure shit works and all of that. But you giving your time to anybody but yourself has value enough to live, enough to be able to pay your bills, enough to be able to enjoy your life.
So this is really cool. The Raven stuff is really great, and like I take my hat off to them. And surely Blizzard have to recognize it, right? There's no way they can't. But unfortunately, this Microsoft news has come at the worst possible time for unionizing efforts.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think this is the best possible time for unionization efforts across the industry. This is a beacon to rally around for all disrespected game developers, which is a lot of game developers and a lot of workers in general. This is the time. Industry-wide strikes, because you guys hold all the cards right now. Developers hold all the cards right now. Video games are the future. Everybody knows it. I'm trying to build a business around video games right now as we speak, using it to help educate kids, supplement their reading skills in a world that they care about the rewards that they get. Like, they enjoy this shit. They'll sit there for hours playing this game. If you play it with them and you read the quests with them and you explain like how the auction house works and relate that to Wall Street, explain how herbalism works in the game, and then go show them the plants that are growing in your backyard that they can eat. This is a template for teaching that has incredible potential, and it's not being utilized like that. And we could, and I am trying.
The interesting part is when a subset of employees attempt to unionize, such as the case with Raven Software QA staff here, while not uncommon for specific shops or teams in bigger corporations to have unions, or different unions from one another, while others do not, they are more often comprised of different disciplines, such as metalworkers and electricians. While there's nothing preventing a specific group of employees, such as QA, from attempting to unionize on their own without the whole, the main difference is that a union's strength lies primarily within their numbers, and that advantage is eroded in smaller groups. That's a very good point.
It's a very good point. It is a point that is understated far too often. And creatives, musicians, artists are all undervalued. Because people want to do the things that speak to their soul, and creativity is destroyed in our education system so that we fit into the corporate world, so that we can sell ourselves to whoever wants to hire us. But we live in an age now where there's more money than fucking we know what to do with. There's not enough stuff. So we make these fake digital products and spend money on NFTs and shit like that, and spend computing power on it, which is not good. It's not good. It's a bubble, and it's bursting. And not having strong labor inflates these bubbles and allows them to continue their gambling on Wall Street and feed their literal greed addiction. That's what these people are doing.
I am currently affected by a strike. My state's bus drivers and other local transport are striking over wages. My city's company says they already pay over tariff. I'm sure English uses a different word here. But of course, their drivers have to join the strike. Sadly, it took me 45 minutes standing in the cold to find out yesterday. However, I'm not mad at the striking drivers. Well, exactly. And this is a thing that happens in London all the time when tube drivers and stuff go on strike. It's ironic, isn't it, that striking is the only thing a lot of workers have. But also, it's almost like a guaranteed way in most industries to lose public support. Because everyone says that they're behind tube drivers and stuff getting more pay until they go on strike and they can't get home from work. And what that should do is it should show people how fucking important their job is, right? And people should go, holy fuck, tube drivers are right. They are really important. We should pay them more. But that's not what people actually do, because we're human beings. They go, these fucking greedy bastards, meaning I can't get home. You know, it's a real shame. Sorry, you probably got asked this before, but I've been really wanting to come back to WoW. I've been having a hard time with all the news and such of Blizz. I was wondering what everyone's opinion of coming back to WoW, and if that really supports some of the bad people at Blizz versus the devs who work hard on the game and aren't hurting people.
The way I've been kind of resolving my karma around this issue and making sure that I can feel okay being in this world still with Bobby Kotick at the helm, is that I match the strike fund with every dollar that I give to Blizzard. That's what I'm doing right now. Doubles my subscription costs, but I want the game to succeed itself. I want Blizzard to succeed itself. I'm indifferent about Microsoft. I have never been a fan of Activision. Neither here nor there. What it comes down to is,
I believe that we live in a society and an economic system where it's basically impossible to spend money without supporting literal slavery.
that is absolutely true. And it's happening around the world, and every time the slavery gets too expensive, they take their production and they move it someplace else. They took production from the United States because labor became too expensive, apparently, and they moved it to China. And Americans invested in China so that they could exploit cheaper labor. And it will continue as long as we allow it. As long as we allow ourselves to be abused in this way.
Like, we live in an economic system where everything you buy has been made literally in the blood of people from the third world or closer to home. We live in an economic system which is based on exploitation of labor and of destroying the environment and of growth to enrich like pieces of shit like Bobby Kotick at the expense of good people like people who make games.
Like the people who burn down the rainforests in order to plant palm oil monocultures, destroying our planet, destroying our ecosystems, destroying the things that actually give us value. I remember reading on Reddit one time that there was a pharmaceutical company that found a rare plant that gave them the chemical compound to create a drug that was effective in some way. They destroyed all of the rare plant that existed on Earth. And now there's only this chemical compound owned by them. That is how these people think. That is what they do. That is how our economy works.
Another way of putting it is there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. I try not to say that because people get really offended because they, that makes them want to just defend capitalism, but that's not what it's about. We put it in terms of capitalism because that's our economic system that we live under. Okay? Me saying there's no ethical consumption under capitalism isn't me saying there is ethical consumption under some other system. That's not what I'm saying.
Socialism can be just as bad. It's government control, honestly. And I have always been like on the left on a lot of social issues, but I see government control and what they're getting away with globally. These corporations own the government now. They have for generations. It's not our voice anymore. It might have been once during revolutionary times when we threw the tea into the harbor and said, you can't tax us without representing us, without giving us a voice. And I don't know if you guys feel like your politicians give a shit about your voice, but I sure don't. I sure don't. So I voted third party in this last election. I phone banked for Bernie Sanders, but I voted third party because I don't believe there's a real difference anymore. I used to believe that, and I don't anymore.
We could talk about that some other time. But like I'm saying, I'm putting it in terms of capitalism because that is the economic system that we and the majority of the world live under. So it's okay to talk about the things that are wrong with capitalism because it's the system that we live under, okay? You know? And like, I don't think it's possible to buy stuff and to consume in this economic system without rewarding incredibly evil acts with your money. Because basically everything is owned by a few companies who just like literally make money from, at worst, slavery and murder in third world countries, and at best, the exploitation of labor at home. Now, what do you do about that? Well, you can vote for political parties that you think would make that better. That's probably the most effective thing you can do, and campaign for
Not
change.
in America.
You could try and become the change by running for office. That would be an awesome thing to do. Unfortunately, in our political system, there's not much you can do to do that because it takes a lot of money to do that, right? So on a personal level, what you can do to make yourself feel better is to
keep up the good work and keep annoying
boycott
those
certain
right
things.
wingers.
Now,
Love it when
boycotts
you do the
can work, okay? Like the boycotts against apartheid South Africa in the 80s could be said to be a success. Like, they gathered a lot of attention, and they changed people's opinions, and eventually, over the years, they contributed to such a build-up of public opinion against apartheid in South Africa that eventually things did change. Now, how much of that was due to the boycotts is debatable, but I think you can use that as an example of where boycotts succeeded. There's a lot more examples of boycotts not succeeding, and generally they are considered to not really make much difference in the grand scheme of things. But where I think they do make an important difference is to you, personally, as a consumer. And just because they don't always make a big difference on a global scale or on like a company-wide scale, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, right? Because if you feel bad consuming a thing because you know the people that make it are bad, or the company does bad things, then you should, yeah. And if it's gonna make you feel good and like you're doing something to boycott that product, you absolutely should. And there are products that I boycott for that reason, because they make me feel better about myself, because I simply cannot bring myself to support certain companies.
Nowadays, you can find out a lot about a company. We finally have the power to hold our purchasing accountable, like hold the people that we buy from accountable. We all have social media. We all have the ability to say, hey, this is what they're putting into your community. Are you good with this? The third world does not have that capability as much as they do here, but they have cell phones now, and they could, if we pay attention to them, get their message out. But often these things don't cross boundaries for whatever reason. We have access to the internet in a lot of these countries, and we just don't pay attention to what's going on. I don't know why.
The companies I boycott are generally companies that I could do without. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people, you know? And it takes like a big fucking sacrifice to actually boycott something that you really like. And there's a reason why a lot of people who make a lot of noise about boycotting Blizzard products are people who were very bored of WoW in the first place. You know? It's very difficult to boycott a product that you actually really like, especially knowing deep down that it doesn't really make a difference, because it probably doesn't. However, that doesn't mean you should do it, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and it doesn't mean you should be criticized for doing it. It doesn't mean that if you say, I want to boycott Blizzard because they're a bunch of shitbags, it's wrong for people to turn around and be like, well, actually, boycotting doesn't make a difference. And so by boycotting Activision Blizzard, all you're really doing is hurting the devs that aren't to blame and who really could do with your support and your money to make sure they don't get sacked. That's bullshit, and I don't agree with that, and people shouldn't do it. Like, if you're going to boycott a product because you disagree with the way it's made and the company that make it, that's a good thing. Just because it doesn't really change anything doesn't make a difference. It's objectively a good thing to do, and you should be applauded for that. And I hate the Fedora wankers who say otherwise. I disagree with them. You should ignore them. Likewise, you shouldn't give people shit, really, if they do continue to use the product for the reasons that I've given above. As a consumer, it's pretty much the only option we have. Yeah, exactly. Well, no. It's not. It's not. Because, like, as I've said before, there are things you can do which will actually make a difference, like vote in political parties that are going to change things.
Good
Like
fucking
stop
luck in the
pretending
United
that
States.
This is the only fucking political, economic system that is worth even living by. Like, a general change in mindset could make a huge difference. Because it's all very well saying, like, oh, this company are bad, you should boycott them. But it does then, unfortunately, beg the question, well, why don't you boycott all the other companies that are bad and evil then? And you can't. You can't. And people shouldn't give you shit because it is impossible. But you shouldn't act all high and mighty about boycotting products either, because it does leave you open to that question, which is a perfectly valid question. What about all the ones you don't boycott? Is that a tactic approval of what they do? If you do boycott this product because you think it's bad, does that mean these products that you don't boycott you think are good? No, of course not. Because consumption is impossible. Ethical consumption is impossible. So yeah, you have to accept that if you boycott a product, you're doing it for you. And that is a perfectly valid thing to do. But you're doing it for you. You're not going to change anything. And you can't, right? So you should. That's not a criticism. And all I'm asking you to accept is, like, and I boycott products myself, but I do it for me. And I do it so I feel good, and so I feel better. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't. The only way you can actually change how these companies work is to change the law. That's the only thing you can do. So the only thing that's actually going to change the way our system works, unfortunately, is to change the system. So it's really a personal thing, and no one can tell you what to do. And I would just ask you that whatever your decision, you don't shit on other people for choosing something different. So if you choose not to boycott, and you know, like, it's worth pointing out that devs at Blizz, who are perfectly innocent in all of this, are split on the matter. A lot of them say that they don't want people to boycott the game because they've worked really fucking hard on the game and they're not to blame, and they want people to just play the game and enjoy it and appreciate their work. And lots of people who left the company because of the things that happen are taking great delight in seeing the company kind of like falter because of these things, right? And I think both of those viewpoints are valid. And so the only thing I would really ask you is to, whatever you choose, it is the right decision for you. And you shouldn't be criticized for that. And I would just ask you to be understanding of people that choose the opposite. You know? I would just ask you to try not to be too judgmental of whatever other people do. So if people choose to boycott, don't be judgmental of that. I think that's a really noble act that should be celebrated. And if people choose not to boycott, It's not because they don't care. You know? It's like...
So, again, this is why I contribute to the strike fund and the game itself. I want both. I want both to be successful. The labor and the company. And they can be, but not under current leadership. And I don't know that that changes with Microsoft. We'll see, but right now, not making an example of Bobby Kotick. Why would I want to build here when I could build anywhere else? ESO. My business ideas.
For other reasons, probably. Which are just as good, and you could argue just as well. So I that's the only thing I would ask of you, is to just try and understand the other side of it, whatever you choose. And I wouldn't criticize you for choosing either, and no one should. Simple as that. Thanks for the chat and the opinion. Gives me a fair bit to think about. It's also refreshing to have someone who is vocal in the WoW community who isn't some right-wing gamer bro. Yeah. That causes me some grief, unfortunately, not being that. But yeah. I think most people aren't. I feel like the vast majority of people in the community aren't that. And I think the vast majority of well-known creators aren't that either. But most people want to keep quiet about their views because
Stay a while.
of the shit they get, man. Like, Gamergate worked in that it scared a bunch of people with progressive views from giving their views in the gaming space, because it showed them that they would be doxxed, it showed them that they would be harassed, it showed them that they would be relentlessly chased for having progressive views.
It works the other way too. I mean, it's literal Nazis running Gamergate, or it was, and your voice matters, and they're bombarding you with angry comments. It hurts, but at the end of the day, not really. Not if you thicken skin and come to an actual conversation. Like these gamer bros, these dude bros, they're working out frustration with a lot of things, and they get radicalized. And video games are a very... it's like an engine for radicalization. Toxic people gravitate towards toxic people. Good people gravitate towards other good people. You know, my experience in WoW was largely respectful throughout, because I was respectful, and those are the people that I played with. There were ninja looters. There were people that didn't give a shit about other players at all. They gravitated towards themselves, and a lot of times it was funny, and they were the elite ones and the really good players, and it's fun to fuck other people over sometimes if they're not as good as you. But that wasn't my experience with WoW. It was friendship when I didn't have family around me, when I was in the Navy. When I was alone, it was connection for me. It was a weekly go have fun and raid with your friends. We didn't even use voice comms when I first started raiding. It was typing shit out. I had all these macros combined with my skills that probably annoyed everybody, but when I used my big DPS cooldowns, I said some shit. I don't remember what it was, but I'm using my big DPS cooldown, but in a funny way. I don't remember. But these worlds, I lived in it. I escaped from the stress of nuclear power school in it. And I still escape from my stress in it. And it's still like a lot of my friends are gone. I have a lot more going on in my real life than I did during nuclear power school because I couldn't even leave the fucking base. You know, I played a lot less WoW once I got out of power school because I had a life and I was in Virginia Beach. But it's always been there for me. It's become a moving meditation for me. I work out mental health shit in this game. Other people do too, and they have different mental health shit to work out. Their anger at losing power in society, males, because that's what's happening. Because it should. But there's always growing pains. It's just about listening even to their perspective. Not giving it sympathy, but giving it empathy. I understand where you're coming from with your bullshit view, is what it comes down to. Common understanding.
Any gaming company can see. Like, there's a very valid argument that said, the very persuasive argument that points out that, you know, whereas the allegations might have been a tipping point for everyone, if people weren't just pissed off with Blizzard anyway, they wouldn't have caused all this shit. And for evidence, you can point to other companies where people do like the games more, where very similar allegations haven't caused anywhere near the fucking stink. You know? Because, believe it or not, Activision Blizzard aren't the only shithouse fucking game developer who treat their people like shit and cover up and hide sexual harassment and protect sexual harassers. You know?
It's all of them.
And like... So, I mean, there's a pretty persuasive argument that, you know, it's not just to do with the harassment and stuff like that. And pretty much every single creator that I've seen do a big video about how they're going to leave WoW were creators that were done with WoW anyway and had hated WoW for a long time. You know? And I think game companies realize that. I think game companies realize that as long as they are creating games that people like, they can pretty much do anything. Blizzard could pretty much do anything when everyone loved WoW and no one cared. You know? So, I think most, you know, even if everyone did boycott Blizzard en masse, I think the lesson games companies would learn from it wouldn't be, oh, we mustn't cover up sexual harassment. It would be, A, we mustn't get caught covering up sexual harassment.
He's not wrong.
And B, as long as we keep him happy with, like, games, we'll be fine. So has he suffered? No.
He was never going to suffer. So make an example of him. Give him his golden parachute and make an example of him.
Like, not at all.
So, I go into sacred economics with Charles Eisenstein after this, and I'm probably going to make a separate video for that. But the ideas that he talks about in this video are, in my view, the direction that this planet needs to be going. Not just this country, not just this economic system, but this planet. And this video has less than 1 million views. It's, you know, compare that with PewDiePie. Compare that with whoever's out there now. And this, to me, this is like the roadmap. Actually taking care of one another and taking care of these systemic problems that aren't addressed because they don't want them to be addressed because they're making a lot of money off these problems. It occurs to me the way that I recorded this video on Twitch with this Charles Eisenstein Sacred Economics video. Couldn't really see it at all. So I'm going to play it now, and then I'll try and edit in whatever interjections I had said in the moment. I don't remember what they were exactly, but Charles Eisenstein, Sacred Economics.
Anytime you want to understand something, why is such and such happening? Why is there a biodiversity crisis? Or why are we drilling for more oil when it's polluting the atmosphere and causing oil spills? Like, why? And you ask why, and down a couple levels of why, you always get to money. Yeah, I talk a lot about the story of self that every culture has, and it answers the question, what are you? What is it to be human? So it says that you're this separate being among other separate beings in a universe that is separate from yourself as well. Like, you're not me, that plant is not me, that's something separate. And this story of self really creates our world. If you're a separate self and there's other separate selves out there and other species out there, and the universe is fundamentally indifferent to you, or even hostile, then you definitely want to control. You want to be able to have power over other beings and over these whimsical, arbitrary forces of nature that could extinguish you at any time. This story is becoming obsolete. It's becoming no longer true. We don't resonate with it anymore. And it's actually generating crises that are insoluble from the methods of control. And that's what's clearing the space for us to step into a new story of self and a new story of the people.
I personally believe that this is the time for generalized worker unionization across game development, at least. Like, this is the time. When people see game development doing it,
well, money's an agreement. It doesn't have value all by itself. It has value because people agree that it has value. Economists will tell you what money does, that it facilitates exchange. You use it to count things and keep track of things. You write some numbers on a magical piece of paper called a check, and you can cause all kinds of abundant goods to come to your house. I mean, you could even cause misery for thousands of people if you are one of the highest initiates of the magic of money. Yeah, scarcity is built into the money system. On a most obvious level, it's because of the way money is created as interest-bearing debt. So anytime a bank lends money into existence or the Federal Reserve creates money, the money comes along with a corresponding amount of debt. And the debt, because there's interest on it, is always greater than the amount of money. So it essentially throws people into competition with each other for never enough money. Growth is another thing that's built into our money system. If you're a bank, you're going to lend to the person who's going to create new goods and services so they can profit and they can pay you back. You're not going to lend to somebody who doesn't create goods and services. So money goes toward those who will create even more of it. But basically, economic growth means that you have to find something that was once nature and make it into a good, or was once a gift relationship and make it into a service. You have to find something that people once got for free, or did for themselves or for each other, and then take it away and sell it back to them somehow.
So the NFTs are the complete polar
By turning things into commodities,
opposite of what
we get
this is supposed to, what we're supposed to be working towards.
We look at nature with eyes of it's just a bunch of stuff. And that leaves us very lonely. And
I want to interject here a little bit. The NFTs are a Ponzi scheme. NFTs are a gambling addict's newest playground. The people that run our economy are gambling addicts. And we keep allowing it. We keep allowing it. We keep allowing it. And they point at the markets and say, look at all this money that we've created out of nothing with our good business acumen, when really it's destructive and predatory lending practices, or destructive and predatory exploitation of natives and whomever else they encounter, exploitation of other countries' labor markets. That's how things run now. And NFTs are just the worst idea of all time. And it's this big thing.
By turning things into commodities, we get cut off from nature in the same way as we're cut off from community. We look at nature with eyes of it's just a bunch of stuff. And that leaves us very lonely and leaves us with many basic human needs that go unmet. And if you have money, you might try to fulfill this hunger through purchasing, through buying things, or through accumulating money itself. And of course, now we're nearing the end of growth. The planet can't sustain much more growth. And that's why the crisis that we have today won't go away. One of the things I talk about is the sense of wrongness that I had as a child. Like, I think most kids have some sense of it, that it's not supposed to be this way. You know, just for example, that you're not supposed to actually hate Monday and be happy when you don't have to go to school. Like, school should be something that you love. Life should be something that you love. We didn't earn any of the things that really keep us alive or that make life good. We didn't earn air. We didn't earn being born. We didn't earn our conception. We didn't earn being able to breathe. We didn't earn having a planet that can provide food. We didn't earn the sun. So I think that on some level, people have this inborn gratitude, because on some level we know that we didn't earn any of this. We know that life is a gift. Well, if you know that you've received a gift, then the natural response is gratitude, the desire to give in turn. In a gift economy, it's not true the way it is in our money economy that everybody's in competition with everybody else. In a gift society, if you have more than you need, you give it to somebody who needs it. That's how you get status. And that's even where security comes from. Because if you build up all that gratitude, then people are going to take care of you too. And if there are no gifts, then there's no community. And we can see as societies become more monetized, that community has disappeared. People long for it, but you can't just have community as an add-on to a monetized life. You have to actually need each other. People desire to enact their gifts. And if they were free from money, they would do it. But money is so often a barrier. People think, oh, I would love to do this, but can I afford to do it? Is it practical? Money stops them. What beautiful thing would I do? What am I called to do? Would it be to set up big gardens for homeless people to take care of and reconnect them to nature? Would it be to clean up a toxic waste site? Like, what would you do? What beautiful thing would you do? And why isn't it practical to do these things? Why isn't there money in those things? An economy that embodies the principles of the gift is an economy that is simply grounded in the truth. The task before us is to align money with the true expression of our gifts. It requires a very different mechanism for the creation of money and the circulation of money. They include things like negative interest, which reverses the effects of usury. They include things like the internalization of costs, so that you can no longer pollute and have somebody else or future generations pay the costs. They include a social dividend, sharing in the wealth that comes from what should be the commons, the land, the aquifers, our cultural heritage. They include a relocalization of a lot of economic functions. They include all kinds of peer-to-peer finance and the peer-to-peer revolution. What will it take to shift away from the current money system? Well, the current money system just works less and less well. Growth can only be maintained at a higher and higher cost. Even our best efforts can't keep the economy growing as fast as it needs to for the system to work. And that creates further misery. People just can't take it anymore. Even the people on top, even the winners of this artificially induced competition, they're not happy either. It's not working for them either. So I think that we're going to see a series of crisis moments, each one more severe than the last. And at each crisis moment, we'll have a collective choice. Do we give up the game and join the people, or do we hold on even tighter? It's really up to us to determine at what point this wake-up point will happen. Was this all a big mistake? That's a good question, and it's sort of, it sure seems like it was sometimes. When you look around at just the horrors that have taken place on this earth and that are ongoing right now, and some people think, I just don't want any part of this. Civilization was a huge mistake. I came to see this whole journey of separation not as a mistake, but as part of a larger process. It started, I think, with the environmental movement in the 1960s. That was its first awakening into mass consciousness. And the astronauts went up and experienced the pinnacle of separation. And the photos that got beamed down, even today, it still evokes love in us. So we're falling in love with Earth. That's one part of our transition into adulthood. The other part is the coming of age ordeal, when the old world falls apart and a new world is born. A child plays. A child plays and develops his or her gifts, but doesn't apply them toward their true purpose yet. And that's what humanity's been doing. We've been messing around, playing with our gifts of technology and culture, and developing these gifts. Now we're coming into adulthood, and it's time to apply them to our true purpose. At the beginning, I think that'll be to simply heal the damage that's been done. And there's a lot of healing that needs to be done, and it's almost impossible, actually. You could say that really we're in the business of creating a miracle here on Earth. I'm saying it's something that is impossible from an old understanding of reality, but possible from a new one. And in fact, it's necessary. And in fact, anything less than that isn't even worth trying.
So that was Sacred Economics with Charles Eisenstein. I look around me at the NFT phenomenon, where they literally want to monetize fucking everything. It's like this hellscape playing out around me of gambling addicts continuing, as always, to rule the fate of our economy with their gambling. And it's wasting all this computing power, and it's just awful in every way, while driving up energy costs for people when we could be using that energy to desalinate water at our coastlines and pipeline it into our mountainous regions and take care of all these forest fires that have been happening and all the lack of development of land that could be utilized by small farmers. I look at now as one of those points, those crisis points that he was talking about in the video. You have Blizzard Entertainment, Activision being bought out by Microsoft. You have an active strike. Well, so the strike is no longer active. They have formed their union. And then, from what I understand, ABK and Bobby Kotick, Raven Software, took the QA department and moved them to other departments so that they didn't have a majority within a QA department. When really they set up their union so that anybody could eventually join it. That's a game developer. In my view, now is the time for all game developers to stand the fuck up. For their pay, for their creativity, for their rights to not be abused in their workplaces. Now is the time. This is when this acquisition is huge news. It's huge. You could be the story. I know, Dana. It's very exciting. Come here. I know, Dana. It's very exciting. Safe. Go to your bed. Good girl. Oh, you're so cute. It's very exciting. Safe. Stay. Good girl. Anyway, in my view, now is the time for game developers to stand up. Because if you do, other people will see you do it. And we can actually, hey, we can actually change things. This is one of those opportunities. The question is, do we take it? Like, I'm not a game developer. All I can do is look around and point at what I see. I can look at what I can point at what I see. I can point at what I hear. But I'm not someone that can go on strike as a game developer. I can just support them by sending some of my money to their strike fund. I've been feeling okay about the shit show because I can match my dollars with the strike fund. Think about it. Now is the time. Game developers in general. You want to end shitty microtransaction practices. Now is the time to engage as a customer. Support the developers as they take their power back. Now is the time. You want to have characters that are actually fleshed out and systems that are actually fleshed out and enjoyable. Now is the time to support game developers and what they're trying to do. I know, Dana. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. Anyway, I digress. The Dan Olson NFT video has, I think, millions of views at this point already. That Sacred Economics video that I just played has less than 1 million, and it's been around for 10 years. NFTs are not the future. Something else is. We are the ones who need to find it. All of us. Stay weird and be kind.